So I think we've got everybody in the Teams room. I don't know how it is. So I'll be with you in about 20 seconds. We're going to put a song just to break it, because obviously it's quite a tough listen. I know you'd appreciate that.
That's fine.
Four tops. And reach out, I'll be there. That is noteworthy done for Monday. We play again tomorrow between 11 and midday. Between 12:30 and 1, more knowledge, more power. Your questions, your answers for Monday afternoon. On Friday, we found out about static electricity and why some people, when they touch stuff, they get an electric shock. And we now know what to do if you're one of those people who does get a bit, how best to put this, charged. Just put your hand on the ground, gets rid of the electricity. Simple as that. So you don't go when you touch something like a car door. Right, and today, what are we dealing with today? We are dealing with Wire's music for a film called A Score. Pat in Withywood wanted to know the answer to that. We'll find out. We will have that knowledge, and therefore that power before 1, and then it's the rewind. You need 2 years of hits. The soundtrack to your lunch on a Monday between 1 and 2.
BBC Radio Bristol.
John Darvall.
To our next guest, who's gone through a thing that is most parents' nightmare. Okay, lives in St George with his wife and his 2 teenage daughters. But 11 years ago, his entire family suffered a huge loss. His son, Chizi, died at just 2 years old from an aggressive type of leukemia, which was the result of a previous cancer treatment when he was a newborn. Okay, has written a book about his son and his family story, and he's here with us in the studio. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, John.
Thank you very much for coming in. I've got your 2 books here.
Oh, thank you.
In front of me.
And thank you very much for platforming me.
No. It's important because, as I mentioned there in the introduction, this is probably every parent's worst nightmare.
Absolutely.
It is out of the sequence of the way things should be.
Absolutely.
So, Chizi must have had quite a tough couple of years because obviously the cancer came back. Was it tough? Or?
No, it wasn't actually. First of all, one very quick correction, because I'd not be happy if I don't make this correction.
Right.
I've got 2 teenage daughters and a son. A 5-year-old and a 5-year-old
so
son.
you've got 3 children.
I've got 3 children. Yes.
Someone will be fine.
no, that's
so
fine.
Apologies.
These things happen.
So you've got. So where does Chizi fit in now?
So Chizi was my our second child.
Right.
He was born on the 2nd of May 2012.
Okay.
A beautiful bouncing baby boy. From the moment he came out, he was just smiling, and unfortunately, I think it was his 3rd month. There was a jab he had to go for, and after that jab, there were some reactions which weren't very, which were worrying that we saw. And
So did you think they were the reactions to the jab, or initially? Or?
This is one of the complexities of our situation. We can never tell that the reaction is what caused the initial neuroblastoma. I wouldn't go that far. I just knew that he went for a jab, and we had a golf ball size tumor, I'd say.
So
where the jab, where he
between correlation and causation, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I looked at it, and we went back to the GP, and they said these things do happen. As rare as it appeared, it does happen, and that we don't need to worry that much about it. So what we noticed was about a week or so later, he stopped eating, and his stomach got really hard, as hard as this.
Yeah.
And that got us really worried, and swollen as well. So we took him into the GP, and they forwarded us to the Children's Hospital. And when we got to the Children's Hospital, we then were told that he had neuroblastoma, which we found out was a rare form of cancer that, is fairly prevalent in children. And that was the beginning of our journey. So to your question, the second AML, which actually took him, was as a result of, and I remember this very clearly, I signed a waiver before the neuroblastoma treatment could commence at 3 months, that there was a 1 in 1,000 chance that the treatment itself could come back as its own secondary cancer, and he just happened to be in that 1 in 1,000.
But I mean, I don't know a single parent who wouldn't have taken those odds. I mean, you just would. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean,
Because 1 in 1,000, it's like
Exactly.
You know, you don't ever think you're going to be the one.
if
do you?
if it was 1 in 50, I still would have
Yeah.
taken that chance, because
Yeah.
all I wanted at that stage was to get him treated. Unfortunately, that's the way we saw it. And then how it progressed. You asked the question. We must have had a difficult 2 years before the cancer came, but no, we didn't know. I
So
mean,
you had the treatment, everything
and he
seemed
went into
fine,
remission.
Everything seemed fine.
Absolutely.
And then you get hit. He gets hit by this again.
We had,
How long did
and
you
wait for it, 36 hours from diagnosis to him going. We took him in on a Monday. He was gone on Wednesday. So, yeah.
So you have a child already. You've just lost your son in 36 hours. What did it do to you and your family?
It, for me, of course, for the family, it broke us. For me, I did what, and I don't mean to segregate this in terms of a cultural attitude to dealing with this, but I dealt with it the way an African deals with things, which is just go into autopilot and just make sure the family was fine, bottle my own feelings. As I said in my book, I used to work with TSB in Gloucester at that time, and for 10 months, every day I drove to work with tears in my eyes, every single day. No one knew. My wife didn't know. My family didn't know. I went to work. In fact, I went to work the day after Chizi passed, because I just couldn't deal with the grief.
Okay, isn't that your way of dealing with it? I just put this to you because is there a right or a wrong way?
No, there isn't.
And you know, we've talked about grief a lot on this program over the years for many reasons, not least of which the 7 steps of grief are not sequential. You don't get to number 7 and go, right, that's
I'm
that
done. I'm done.
I'm done now. I'm going with my life. That's complete nonsense.
No, it's a lifelong thing.
Absolutely, grief is something that stays with you. And I recently, because of things that have happened in my life, I've said, you know, don't try and wrestle grief. You will lose.
Yes.
Don't bother fighting it. Learn to live with it, and that's not an easy thing to do. And I just wonder, from your point of view, whether I detect that you sort of felt bad about you drove to work with tears in your eyes, but how else would you have handled it?
Yeah,
How else?
I guess, John, it was just my coping mechanism. It was just the way I knew how to cope with it. I remember.
To your family.
Yeah. Well.
To provide.
Yes, exactly. Because I worked then as a consultant. You know, if I didn't go to work, we didn't get paid. So at the end of our couple of days ordeal leading to Chizi's passing, you know, I had to go to work. You know, I had my family. The house was, you know, a pretty dark place to be in. I had my mom, who had just traveled from Nigeria to see her miracle child who survived neuroblastoma. She just happened to travel to the UK within that 2 months that Chizi passed. And I was adamant that she didn't come because she had asthma, all sorts of illnesses. November wasn't a good time for her to come. But she said no. She did. She insisted that she would buy her own ticket. So I had to cave in and bought the tickets for her. And she came and she bonded. I was talking to her yesterday and she told me whenever she thinks about it, it's so bittersweet. You know, it's bonding with that child and losing that child within that space of time.
Something she would never have done.
She would never have done. She said she told me yesterday. She would never forget that.
Never have had that gift.
Exactly.
I wonder. I'm going to take a pause for a piece of music because we're going to bring in a trustee from the Children with Cancer UK Trust. But I just wonder, when you look at your 2 daughters and your son, 11 years on, you look at clearly you've had other children.
Yes.
Since losing Chizi. Where are you now as a family?
Oh, we're in a good place. Oh, we are thriving, I would say. And this is my message, and this is the reason why I'm here, to talk to the world and to talk to those people who are walking the path that we did some 11 years ago. We're just about getting to the period. It was on bonfire night he passed. So normally this sort of time of the year over the last 10 years has been a bit of a tricky scenario to deal with, because obviously the children want to go on trick or treating and all of that. What do they know? But for me, it just brings in fact, once it starts getting to this month, from October, November, it gets dark for me personally. But
Is it as dark in 2025 as
No.
it was in
no
20?
brilliant question. No, this year doesn't feel dark at all, John, and I tell you why.
Go on.
I have purpose. Something that I prayed for when Chizi passed. What's in your hand there is my
I've got
purpose.
two books. I've got Chizi's Light, which you're going to talk about.
Yep.
And you've got the Bravest Little Bear, which is a book as
That's
well.
a children's
And
adaptation.
this purpose is greater and better and more meaningful than the purpose of getting in the car to go to the
Absolutely.
to do consulting.
Absolutely.
Lanyard in hand.
Absolutely. In life, we all pray to find our purpose before we leave this planet. We there's a reason for everyone. And if you're lucky enough to find your purpose, I would say latch onto. And so, unfortunately, it is an unfortunate event that's led to my purpose, but that purpose is helping children currently.
Well, we're going to talk about that, and we'll bring in Sara from who's a trustee at the Children with Cancer UK after the Pretenders. Brilliant, thank you.
That's okay.
So we'll talk about the books.
That's Sara on Teams.
Okay, Sara. Okay, we'll bring in Sara as well. I mean, these are. It's difficult, isn't it? Finding a purpose after
Absolutely.
you've lost a child.
Absolutely.
You just sort of, for a large number of years.
It took me 10 years.
Well, I lost my daughter in a road accident 10 years ago this year. So October, I completely empathise with what you're talking about, because her birthday was October the 17th and she died on the 31st of October. So 2 weeks after her 22nd birthday.
How old was she?
22.
Sorry to hear that.
So yeah, I live with that now. I live with that. So this year is 10 years, and you can intellectualise it. Say, well, it's 10 years. Well, that's no different to 9 years or 13 years.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The grief is the grief. You
It's
just move
in
away
your
from
head,
it,
isn't
and then
it?
it comes back, and then it goes away, and it
Yeah.
comes back.
Yeah.
So that's why I posted this earlier this year on my birthday. Is that wrestle with grief, you're a fool. Don't wrestle with it. Let it do its thing.
Your best friend, I guess, with regards to grief, is time.
Yeah.
Effectively.
I would say that's a very
It
good
numbs the pain.
Yeah.
Pain never goes away.
No.
It just helps you
Well, that's the
understand.
the grief is, and I do. Like Queen said, grief is the price of love. That is true.
Yeah.
I personally believe grief is love with nowhere to go. Is that you miss that child. You can't give any more love.
Yes.
Because it could never come back.
Yes.
So it's a love that has nowhere to go.
It's just
But
permanently
you can
there.
then put that love into other things.
Exactly.
So
I'm like I said, it's normally this time of the year. Over the last 10 years, it's been pretty dark. But this year, having made a pact with myself and published that book on the 10th anniversary of Chizi's passing, 5th of November last year, I published Chizi's Light. And then I decided, okay, we need to make this more accessible. So do a children's adaptation, which then became that. And that's being used in 7 schools at the moment.
Good. Brilliant. So I'll bring Sara in as well.
Yep.
Pretenders and brass in pocket. Rabbits the butler wants a steward's inquiry saying he was noteworthy at 11:20. We were noteworthy at 11:20. No need for a steward's inquiry. As I say, it's always tricky to wake a manager up between 1 and 2 because they've just been out for lunch and I like to sleep it off a bit. Anyway, worthy Rabbits the butler still with us is Oki. Okay, talking about his son Chizi, who you wrote a book about Chizi.
Yep.
Which you published last year.
Last year, 5th of
on
November.
the 10th anniversary of losing your son.
10th anniversary.
Why did you write the book?
Because of a vow that I made on the day of his funeral mass at St. Nicholas in Easton. And I basically, it was a question or a statement I put to God in terms of my faith, because I'm a Christian. And I said, God, before I leave this world, I need you to make me understand Jesus' purpose in our life. Now I waited 10 years. Life carried on. Obviously, I had a family to look after, and sometimes you find lots of things get in the way of doing what. And I knew in my head I had to do this. When it got to the 10th anniversary, I had to face myself and say, you have been procrastinating for quite some time now. It's about time you get on and do something. And I started with saying, okay, what I will do is tell his story.
Procrastinating? Were you procrastinating, or were you giving yourself the space? Because there's a rawness to this. If you were to have written it after the first or second or third year,
Yes.
I doubt very much it would have been as good and as accepted in the schools as it's been accepted, and you would have been able to write The Bravest Little Star, the book, the sort of the children's version of this. You wouldn't have been able to write that.
You know what? I think you are right, in the sense everything happens, and I don't want to make this a religious comment. Everything happens in God's time. In terms of it didn't need to happen then. You're absolutely right. For one reason or the other, I put it as procrastination because maybe I'm being too hard on myself.
I think you are. I'm far be it from me to criticise you, okay? But I think you are, because whether you have faith or whether you don't, when you know, don't you? When you know, you know. So you've written these books now, and The Bravest Little Star is the sort of the
Bravest Little
version.
Bear.
Sorry, Bravest Little Bear.
Yeah.
Which is book one, The Shadow Bully.
Yes.
Which is how you sort of are helping children with grief.
Yes, indeed.
And deal with cancer as well.
Absolutely.
Because there's a difference.
Absolutely.
Not every cancer these days results in the tragedy that you've had to live with.
And this is, and I'm sure Children with Cancer UK would elucidate more on this.
Let's bring in Sara Wakeling, trustee of Children with Cancer UK. Sara, good afternoon. No, thank you for joining us. Obviously, this is an incredibly important conversation we're having. I just wanted to bring you in because obviously we know so much more about cancer in the last 10 years than we did in the previous 25 about how we can treat it, target it, know more about it. The outcomes are so much better.
Yeah, and first of all, I just wanted to thank OK for going on and telling his story. It takes a lot of bravery, I think, to shine the light on Chizi's story and for kind of explaining how he's used it as a constructive therapy for himself. And you're right, John. I mean, there's been a huge amount of progress in terms of cancer research. Unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily translate to children's cancers. Every day, 10 millions are diagnosed with cancer, and unfortunately, 2 of those children will die. And of those 8 who survive, 70%, over 70% will have long-term side effects as a result of their treatment. And unfortunately, children are being treated with protocols that are very generic, not targeted, and over 40 years old. And I think Chizi's story very sadly shows the toxicity, how brutal these treatments are, and how they can sadly induce secondary cancers. And it was a 1 in 1,000, but we do hear of other cases related to that. And I think one of the missions that Children with Cancer look out for today is we know there needs to be kinder treatments. It is not good enough that Chizi was treated for his neuroblastoma and then him and his family had to go through a secondary diagnosis. That is not how things should look today in 2025. And as a charity, one of our core goals is research, and research looking into kinder treatments that would enable a child like Chizi to be here today.
And of course, that research, that what you're talking about there, can only be done when you have instances that are sometimes born with a tragedy attached, because you can only research what you know and what has happened.
Absolutely, and I think these real stories that we're producing at Children with Cancer, the stories are at the heart of how we formulate research. Every story uncovers clues to the future, to unlocking discoveries, and Chizi's story is one of those stories as well. Chizi's story, unfortunately, the situation his family are in, we have to look at Chizi's story. Scientists have to look at Chizi's story, and we have to convert that into hope for families in the future. Hope is absolutely critical for families at the point of diagnosis. And I think it's research that really brings that hope to a family. It gives them the motivation to continue through what is a very lengthy treatment journey in many cases.
Sara, thank you very much for joining us from the Children with Cancer UK as a trustee of that charity. I'm very grateful for your input. Sara, thank you very much indeed. Okay, I'm going to come back to you because while Sara was talking and I was listening to her, I was flipping through The Bravest Little Bear, book 1, The Shadow. These are beautiful pictures.
Thank you.
I mean, they really are, and I can see how you put a great deal of thought into this to help children. Not only, I just noticed there, one of the things that many parents will have that balance if they've got a child who's well and a child who's not well, and the child who's well probably feels a little bit left out, and that's a balancing act.
Exactly.
Lots of little things I've clocked in this book
Yeah.
that will help anybody who's got a child who's not well manage things a little bit better.
Absolutely. I mean, that book deals with a child who is actually ill in hospital.
Yeah.
It deals with their sibling and sibling feelings. It also deals with a child who survived cancer. And then it deals with a situation where a child has gone through loss of an uncle, loss of a parent, loss of a pet, loss of anything significant that is. And as you can see, the first 45 pages, this is actually an innovation. I'm working with quite a number of
You're working with a number of people on this by the looks of it.
the NHS
Yeah.
NHS Innovation Southwest is working with me regarding trying to get feedback from the schools that are currently using this to be able to form evidence-based data. I'm also working with Child Bereavement UK, who helped me with the language framing and the overall framework. I'm working with the co-op, who have very kindly decided to signpost this in all of the branches in the UK. And of course, I'm working closely with Children with Cancer UK, who to me, I know Sarah's just spoken, and I think it's worth mentioning this, to me, are a fantastic charity. And this is not me undermining any other charity. I mean, I got in touch with Children with Cancer UK when I wrote Chizi's Light. Otherwise, I used to be one of those skeptic people that would not normally do much for charity because I didn't know where the funds went. Now, when I contacted quite a number of charities, no one responded the way Children with Cancer UK responded. Someone called me back straight away once they saw my message, a guy by the name of John Barnes, I would never forget that, and spent 45 minutes with me on the phone, you know. Very compassionate human being, spent 45 minutes, made me feel very welcome. I told him our story, and within the next couple of days, I had another lady from Children with Cancer UK contact me, and right now, the sort of relationship we've got, I know I had a tea with the CEO just a couple of days ago on Wednesday, last week, that is. You know, so they are very human. There's a human face to this charity that I really appreciate.
Which ultimately, as we bring our time to a close now, it is about humanity. It's the
Absolutely.
humanity of a family. It is
Absolutely.
the humanity, because grief will affect every single person in that family differently. The father, the mother, the brother, the sister. The children who have obviously come after Chizi, who have that as a backdrop.
Yep.
And they don't, I mean, they have no point of reference
Yep.
other than they know that there is this underlying moment
Yes.
that can transform. I'm not going to say sadness, but an underlying moment. For some, it will be a sadness.
Yeah.
For others, it'll be a wrestle. For others, it'll be whatever. They were born into this.
They were born into it, and so far the way in which I've dealt with it is just to make sure that they know Chizi. They go.
have a brother.
Yes, they go
have
with
a
me
brother.
to his graveside. If I could just mention one
Very briefly, please.
very quickly. So that book you're looking at there is a regulation that has come into place by the Department for Education that will kick in from next September, called the RSHE, so Relationship, Sex and Health Education. Now, that mandates every school in England from September 2026 to start teaching grief and loss to children. And that's exactly what the Bravest Little Bear is doing.
Good.
So, very timely.
Well, it is indeed. The Bravest Little Bear, Book 1, The Shadow Bully.
Yeah.
That's out. Chizi's Light, that's out. Oki, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for
pleasure.
platforming me.
There you go.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much indeed.
No, really appreciate
No,
that.
not at all. Not at all.
I'm more than happy. No, this is
Oh,
for
no. Thank you.
this
Thank
is
you.
for you guys.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm more than happy to bring more copies for your colleagues because just for the cause that is.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Well, yeah, talk to Anna. She'll be
Fantastic.
able to sort it out. But I wish you every success.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and I'm really sorry.